Welcome to the Alchemy of Ascension Season 5, activating Starseeds, Walkins, and the new human of the Golden Age. I'm your host, Waxela Sananda, and today it's my pleasure to introduce you to SARYON Michael White. Welcome, SARYON.
Hi, it's great to be here.
I'm so happy to have you. I think we're going to have an amazing conversation today. But first, I would love to invite everyone to join us in a short alignment process so we can really get focused and present for whatever information comes through today. So I invite you to, if you're in a place where you can close your eyes and you're not driving a car or something like that, go ahead and close your eyes and tune into your body. And as you're breathing, deepen your breath into your belly. And with each breath, bring yourself more present, more focused into your physical body. And now get in touch with the light that is in your heart and your heart center. This is your heart light. Just feel the warmth of that light growing out around your chest. And now feel that heart light expanding and moving up to the top of the head, and then continuing up all the way into central sun, making contact with the heart of central sun and the divine light codes that are present there. And then bringing that heart light and the perfect light codes for you down through the ethers into the top of your head, moving into your body, moving down into every energy center to the base of the spine. And then continue that line of energy down all the way into the center of the earth, making contact with the heart of Mother Earth. And feel the heart light in the center of Mother Gaia. And then bring that energy up through the layers of the earth into the base of the spine, spreading out into your body and moving up into every energy center to the top of your head. Take a deep breath now and bring those three energies from above, below, and within into your heart center, creating a holy trinity of light. And in this space, I invite you to open to receive whatever is for your highest good in this conversation today, with focus and openness and presence. And with that, I invite you to come back. You can open your eyes, and I'm going to share a little bit about what SARYON has been up to. SARYON Michael White is an author, international speaker, intuitive consultant, spiritual channel, and spokesperson for the Ascended Masters, founder and teacher of the School of Manifestation and global messenger of humanity's peace potential. SARYON's explorations have led to extraordinary breakthroughs in the field of out-of-body travel, remote viewing, ET contact, and multidimensional states of consciousness. SARYON delivers messages of empowerment that bring the invisible into the experiential, making sense of a greater reality. I love that. That's what I'm all about too. Let's make it experiential. So welcome, SARYON. And I'd love to, since this is your first time on the Alchemy of Ascension, I would love to begin with your origin story. How did you get into this line of work? How did you get to the point where you are now? And just whatever you'd like to share from that space.
Yeah, sure. My awakening was a very dramatic one that took place in my late teens. But even before I had my awakening, I was starting to journal about having an awakening. I just had this sense that a spiritual awakening was coming. And I started reading channeled books and felt so drawn to the subject. As soon as I understood what channeling was and what channeled teachings and books were, I just knew that was the kind of author that I was meant to be. So I had this sense of destiny, like I'm going to be a writer one day. I'm going to write books that change the world. I felt that even as a little kid, but I didn't know what kind of a writer I was going to be until I got turned on to channeling. And then it just sort of all hit me. And I said, this is it. You know, I was 17 years old. I knew exactly what I wanted to do with my life. And from there, the doors started opening quite dramatically, from ET contact to mystical experiences, out of body experiences. The ability to travel out of the body was probably the most prominent aspect of my training spiritually in the beginning, because that just started happening in my freshman year in college. And I used that ability to explore. I would lay down, unhook from my body, float up above it. I would ask for spiritual guides to please come and train me. I said, hey, can you take me to see, are there extraterrestrial ships around? Can I communicate with ETs? Are they observing us? Can I make contact? And that started happening right away. And then I started saying, hey, okay, I see you guys from the out of body state. Can we have contact in the body? And then immediately, like the very next night after I requested that, it happened. So I actually started having physical sightings of ships and communicating telepathically with the beings inside. I had a walk-in channel come to me out of nowhere, appeared to me in a dream first, and then I met them in person, and they recognized me, started giving me all this information about how to make contact with ETs and how to work with these creative cosmic rays coming from other star systems. And as an 18-year-old at the time, I had never heard anything about this. I mean, even the channel books that I had read thus far had not really clued me in, but I was an open sponge. I mean, I just was absorbing everything that came to me. And luckily, I had a lot of support from the Christ energy, and the Master Jesus really showed up very strongly and helped me to rise in my discernment very quickly, so that I could see that people that are awakening as channels or opening as conduits or discovering their multidimensionality, a lot of times the light that opens up inside of us attracts the dark, trying to interfere, trying to mislead people, trying to promote very ungrounded forms of spirituality. So I got a taste of that in the beginning, and my discernment evolved very quickly, such that I was able to help people along the way that were also dealing with that kind of interference, which is everywhere. Yeah.
That's fascinating. And yeah, I know you have a lot of experience, and lots of amazing things have happened. I love that you brought up the shadow too, how the dark, when you open up that shadow or the side of things, and the darkness shows up, and then you get to learn the discernment and kind of make a choice. It seems like spiritual people are kind of a target, or spiritually open people become a target for that. And can you say more about, like, what was your experience around that, and discerning the dark, and then making the choice to work with the light?
Well, in the very beginning, when all of this started happening and my channel was opening up to the higher dimensions, I had this really interesting conversation with the Master Jesus. And I understood from this very expanded state of awareness in the presence of the Master that there was tremendous darkness in the world, and there were dark forces that were trying to lead humanity astray. Oh, sorry. Forgot to turn that off. So we, let me get my train of thought back here. We were having this dialogue about the darkness, and I realized that I needed to understand this from a firsthand perspective. I needed some awareness that could help me guide other people and steer clear of this kind of stuff myself. So I asked, can I fall away from this truth and this light that I'm in the presence of with you, and fall into the influence of these dark forces temporarily, so that I can see the ways that they're tricking people. And then I want you to pull me out of it, so that I then know what their plans are. We're going to trick the dark forces into disclosing their plans, because they're going to think temporarily like they've got me, And so I devised this whole plan with the Master Jesus, and that's exactly what happened. He initiated this opening in my channel that created a tremendous amount of light, and it drew in all of these dark forces that were uh, trying to interfere. And I was very influenced by it for a few days. And what I noticed is these forces were trying to promote ideas like that, you're here to save the world, and we are going to inform you. We're going to help you expand your abilities so that you become more powerful and more influential. They'll look for anything that you have an attachment to: fame, the grandeur of psychic abilities, um, you know, being at the center of some kind of story that makes you feel spiritually very special. All of those kinds of tricks were being employed. And then once I got to the point of seeing with great clarity just how far these energies were willing to go to unground me, that's when I snapped back. And I got this message that I needed to get grounded. I needed to connect with the earth. I needed to connect with my body, use the body as a shelter, and to ground all of those new psychic feelers that had started to open up back into the earth connection. And when I did that, the Christ energy came in and protected me, grounded me again, cleared away all of the darkness. And I was sitting with it for a long time going, oh my God, this is what's really out there. This is what we're dealing with. And since that time, and even all the way up, that was, gosh, a couple decades ago. But even since that time, I've had, or even recently, I've had people coming to me that are having the same experiences where their channels just pop open and they're being influenced by these interfering dark energies, some of them extraterrestrial, some of them astral, and they're just completely surrounded by entities and they can't tell light from dark. It's all confused. And I have to very gently work with people in that state and help them get grounded and help them find the path of discernment, because it's very difficult for some people to let go of the grandeur of what they're being told by these astral entities, of like how special they are, and how they're part of this huge mission that's going to help the world ascend. I mean, in an ungrounded way. I'm not saying that we don't have that as part of our mission, but we're being fed sometimes in a very ungrounded version of it that keeps people from connecting with the real core of their discernment.
Yeah. So I think this is a super important conversation. And how would a person be able to identify, and I know that's, what you're alluding to, but how does a person identify if maybe they think they're working with a light being and yet they're not? I mean, what I know, that's an issue for a lot of people, and I've seen it, and I'd love to know what are the ways to identify. You said they're appealing to your ego, number one. Are
Yes.
there other ways? And also I find it fascinating that you chose that experience for yourself to go just experience the dark and learn that. So I'd love to unpack it for people who maybe are unclear, like, am I working with the dark, or am I influenced by the dark, or how do we know that we're in the clear working with the light?
Yeah. In my case, this was a divinely orchestrated setup where I basically played the role of a double agent,
Mhm.
tricking the dark forces into revealing their plans. And there's way, way more to what I'm saying. I mean, I saw plans within plans within plans of things that they wanted to implement over a long period of time, and how they wanted to, work with people that would represent those agendas as like a spokesperson, so that I could see and recognize when other people were getting trapped into that were much further along with the deception. Because some people, they might clear themselves of something like this in a very short period of time. In my case, it happened all in 3 days because it was part of a plan to, give me this really big boost of discernment. But I see a lot of other people, when they get hit with something like this, they can struggle with it for weeks, for months. They can sort of go in and out of it. And in a worst case scenario, you have people that are very influential, that have a big following, that have a lot of fame in the world that are also getting tricked in various ways, or they have psychic tie-ins to these agendas, and they just don't even know who they're serving. So to come back to your question, like, how do you discern? Well, when it comes to like light workers, star seeds, especially people that have the galactic connection, that's one of the doorways in. What I've seen happen is that sometimes people might have an opening that comes from a legitimate contact from higher guides, from soul family, from various starships, various families of light that are activating you. But then dark forces rush in and try to co-opt the communication and put a spin on it. And one of the things they'll do is they'll try to convince you that the ascension process is going to happen way, way faster than it really is. And, oh, you're just like days away or weeks or maybe months away from being on board the ship again and just being, right back up there in your ascended light body. And then you're going to come back and be this big world teacher. And they'll tell you those kinds of things to unground you and to confuse you. Because, of course, they know over time that's not going to happen. So they want to confuse people as much as possible about the ascension path and not have them realize the deeper level of commitment that it actually takes to walk that kind of path over, the long haul for the duration of our lifetimes.
Okay. So is there a certain frequency to these communications that maybe a sensitive person would be able to discern or pick up?
Yeah, I would say that one of the core elements of this would be a sense of urgency. When there is a sense of urgency from the communication, always trying to, it's just like how, we have advertisements that pop up when you're on a website to try to distract you away from what you're doing and to get you to click on something. It's a little bit like that. There's a sense of urgency. They'll tell you things that are flashy, that try to feed the ego in some way. And you can tell at a certain point, it starts to become clear when your ego is getting fed, because it ungrounds you and you start to have a sense of what it really means and what it really feels like to be out of integrity with your soul's blueprint and with where your body is actually at on the timeline.
Okay, great.
Yeah, but a sense of urgency is one of the things you want to look out for.
Okay. That's really interesting. Okay. So I want to move on, and I feel like I could talk about that all day,
Right.
but we have a lot to cover. So I'm going to move on to another question. And so you talked about having a spiritual identity crisis in our last conversation. Can you unpack what does it mean to have a spiritual identity crisis?
Well, we were talking about this a little bit in the context of starseeds and walk-ins, and I think a lot about how there's this huge conversation taking place online now where people are talking about who their starseed lineage is, and I'm Sirian, I'm Pleiadian, I'm Arcturian or whatever, and that I feel may be an important part of a person's awakening to realize that they do have a connection to these kinds of things. But there's a lot of other things that can be going on psychologically at the same time. One of the things that is really common is this sort of denial of our humanity, really not wanting to own the human side of who and what we are. I see this all the time where people are like, well, I'm just an observer down here. I'm not one of these people. I belong to like a higher family of consciousness. And so there's a little bit of a lack of a more fully rounded understanding of how human beings were designed to be the melting pot. We're the ones that are integrating everyone and everything else into who we are, because what we are becoming is something, in a sense, and I don't mean this in a superior way, but in a sense greater than what all of these civilizations that contributed to us have been able to become. This planet right here, right now, our species, this time, this is the heart of the evolutionary shift taking place in a very large portion of the galaxy. And part of the entire galaxy itself is evolving through us. So we are what's cool. We are where it's at. Like if you feel really connected to one particular lineage, that's awesome. However, don't get stuck on it. Keep expanding, because eventually you realize that we're integrating with the entire galactic spectrum of consciousness, and the galactic DNA that we have is capable of assimilating the balance and the spectrum of all of it. So there was a contact that I had, an experience of contact I had many years ago, where I was lying in bed and I didn't sleep all night because I kept getting contacted over and over again by different groups of ETs. And it was one after another after another. I could not tell what was going on at first. I thought, this is really, really wild. I keep having these vibrational contacts. I'm seeing beings of all different shapes and sizes and colors and vibrations. And it's opening my inner senses up into the state of contact. And I want to say there was probably about 60 or 70 different groups in one night. It's the only time that I've had something quite like that. And finally, I had a conversation with this one group of these kind of tall, glowing blue beings. And I said, like, what is going on? And they said, your DNA is evolving. Your galactic DNA is coming online. And so the whole spectrum is coming online inside your body. And it was the full range, from the more light, love-oriented beings to beings within the spectrum that hide who they are and hide their agendas. I could feel and see all of it. So that's the kind of opening that we have the potential to integrate in this whole process. Now, in terms of an identity crisis, we did talk about how there are some key differences between, for example, being somebody that comes from a lineage of humans that has maybe slightly more extraterrestrial DNA than average. Everyone has some because we were created that way. But some people are from a lineage where there was a seeding project that's a little more recent, maybe in the past few thousand years, or 10,000 years, 5,000, 3,000. There are different seeding projects, some of them much more recent, even taking place just in the last 100 years. And that's one thing. It's a whole different story when you have a walk-in guide, which a lot of people don't know about. People identify sometimes as walk-ins, like, I come from this other place, and they don't realize that in some cases they may have a walk-in extraterrestrial guide from those places, but they are identifying with the guide as if that's who they are. And they don't realize that the guide is just there to shepherd them and steward them through a period of life. There's sometimes a way in which their missions are happening in a collaborative way through the same body. But once that guide leaves, then you find out, oh, wait a second, that's not who I was. That's an aspect of who I am, but that's actually a whole different being. And now what's left here in the body is who I really am. So then you could have a whole other discovery process about that. And sometimes it does lead to an identity crisis. Like, I thought I was Pleiadian, and then I found out, oh, that's just a walk-in guide. And when they leave, then you have to realize that there's more to who you are than what you thought, that it's not all tied up in any one particular civilization.
Right. Sheila Seppi are you familiar with her?
Yes.
She wrote the book Walkins. She'll be on this summit as well. But she talks about the different types of walk-ins, and one of them is a braid. I'm not sure what all the different names. One of them's a type of braid where both of the consciousness, like two different consciousnesses at the same time in the body, both aware of each other and working together. And it sounds similar to what you're describing, only that the guide is temporary, while the native soul is permanent in the body, or owns the body.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of different ways that it can happen. I'm glad there are people that are starting to offer more detailed descriptions of what they're observing and experiencing with this phenomenon. It's a really fascinating topic. I wish the field of psychology would evolve and adapt to incorporate more of a sense of our multidimensionality, because a lot of people are having experiences with this, and it's not considered normal or even recognized as normal yet.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm someone who I don't know, I'm kind of a walk-in magnet. I've had so many walk-ins in my world my whole life. I traveled with a shaman who was a walk-in, a temporary walk-in for about 3 years, and also a braid. So it wasn't like the original was entirely gone. I didn't know that at the time. I didn't know it until he left, and my guidance showed me later what had what exactly had happened here. But there are so many different ways that we can experience walk-in type experiences or exo-consciousness experiences. So I find these conversations really fascinating because it does open the mind to what's possible. Just like you with channeling, I know you've gone really deep with channeling and contact in ways that maybe a lot of people aren't familiar with. And so I find it really interesting to hear about all of your different experiences as well. Um, yeah, speaking of that, we were talking before we began about something really interesting, which was you had talked about our ET parts integrating us, and then you realized at some point you were having an experience in a ship where you said you were being channeled by an ET. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, well, that's one of many different experiences where I found myself in the body of what I would describe as a soul extension, another soul that has a similar origin in terms of it's like a shared multidimensional self. And so in my out of body travels, I've also done these kinds of inner journeys where I've traveled into the channel of the soul and through the channel of the soul into these higher chambers of consciousness that link many worlds together. And from there, you can kind of go through different doorways and connect with different bodies on different worlds. And what I found out is that while I am doing that and integrating more of the fullness of the multidimensional self on certain levels into who I am here, there are other souls like me that are connected to that same multidimensional self that are doing the exact same thing. And so sometimes we meet up, sometimes we visit each other's bodies. I've had guides that will come from another world and they recognize me as a soulmate or an aspect of the same multidimensional self, and they might come hang out with me in the body for a couple of days and see what life is like on Earth. And then I become like a tour guide, and I'm just showing them around. And then I sometimes flip over and have the same experience in their world. So yeah, there are definitely other aspects of our multidimensional selves that are integrating us as part of their process of ascension and awakening to their multidimensionality.
Mm. So would you call that like an oversoul, that there's an oversoul that has many different, like a multi-dimensional personalities, if you want to call it that, or incarnations that you can kind of hop around and experience each other's lives when you're connected to the same oversoul?
Yep. Yeah, it's something like that. I have uh, journeyed up into the chamber of the oversoul, and then that's connected to higher chambers of consciousness, and it just keeps going and going and going. They're all stacked on top of each other, and it's possible to merge with them in your consciousness, to travel into them, to communicate with higher levels of self and have dialogues about the process that's happening with all of this integration work. It's really fascinating stuff.
So interesting. Yeah, and I love the concept of like when our ET counterparts are channeling us, that we get to come through and have, kind of share with them what our experience is like. I've had a little bit of experience around that in just more like communication, but it's amazing what can happen and what can show up when you start to expand out. And so, kind of back into the conversation about not getting too attached to being from a certain place or one or another, or, I'm this or I'm that, or labeling ourselves. Do you find that as you open up to more and more of these concepts and ideas and experiences, that you find that you connect and become aware of yourself as all of them in a more multidimensional way?
Well, yes. However, I was having this conversation with somebody just recently that, sometimes we have a lot of connections with other families of consciousness, but they also know from their end of things that if they came too close to us, or if they vibed with us too strongly, it would create us to really miss being in those other realms so much that it would unground us and make it very difficult for us to remain here in these bodies. So a lot of us have an enormous amount of connections to, beings on the other side, and different, starships, and uh, different species of galactic beings, but they only will contact us just enough vibrationally to activate a connection. If we were getting really the full force of the connection that's available to us, it would just make it very, very difficult to be here.
Hmm.
So I feel there will be a time we have to actually perfect the practice of grounding light in these bodies. That's a very large part of what the ascension process is going to be going forward, is a process of anchoring light, grounding light, and then perfecting mass techniques of anchoring and grounding light in a way that embraces the world with light. And once we have mastered that, and we've brought the whole world into a divine embrace that is being held in a light that is grounded through the physical body, and we're not, trying to get ahead of the game. Nobody's trying to ascend by themselves or escape the collective. Instead, they're just entirely focused on empowering the collective shift in consciousness as a conduit. When we perfect that, we're going to see some really dramatic openings take place at a certain point that do reconnect us with, groups like the Arcturians, for example, in a more profound way than what anyone is seeing at this stage. Because those connections are very powerful, and they can change you permanently. They can change your consciousness. But it's only going to happen when we get to a point where we're able to meet those beings as equals through a mutual acknowledgement of oneness.
Wow, I love that. And even just presencing the concept of ascension for self versus ascension for collective, and having our minds be around the service to whole versus service to self. What, you're talking about these mass experiences. Can you share more about that? Like how does that unfold?
Well, right now, what the masters have been saying through me as a channel is that a lot of the talk about ascension, it can get ungrounded in terms of where we're at, and what's actually in front of us. And what they're saying is that what's most relevant in the ascension process now is the focus on discovering all of the ways of synergy that are awakening inside of us, where we learn how to vibe with each other and vibe with the field of light that's increasing in the world in a way that synergistically creates opening and expansion in our chakras. So this is something that's going to start happening more and more in the world, where somebody that is intent on building vibration in a grounded way will just find other people that are ready to hold the light in a way that supports the synergy. And you'll just keep meeting people synchronistically that are ready to vibe with this synergy consciousness that builds vibration. I've had a lot of experiences with this where I will meet somebody that is sort of prepared to allow the light to create this kind of effect where your consciousness starts to blend together, and you move into a celebration of your connection with each other through the light. And so there's no pull. Nobody's trying to get to a higher state of connection through the other person's channel. There's total balance, there's equality of being, and you're both just forming a larger container for the light and allowing the light to open deeper and deeper states of connectedness where you both practice celebrating each other, celebrating your connection with each other through the light, celebrating the light that's unifying you. And you just build vibration for a while. Your vibrations go up, you become more balanced, you balance each other into higher levels of the field. And then you go on and you do it with other people. And we keep doing this with each other more and more, and then discovering that same kind of synergy with animals, with plants, with the environment, with groups of people that are practicing meditation and grounding light with the earth. And eventually, we get to this point where we start to realize that we are beginning to hold this kind of field collectively on a planetary scale. I don't know how many people it's going to take. I don't know how long it's going to take, but at a certain point, we are going to have a segment of the population that is sharing a state of global consciousness and global awareness of the fact that we are now holding this field of light and practicing our skills of extending the light to entrain more and more people into it. And it'll be like a global cultural spiritual practice. We'll all be strengthening in the practice through practicing with each other. But as we grow strong in the practice of holding and embracing others through light, then we will be able to do that with virtually anyone that we meet. Constantly entraining more and more of the global population just through sacred contact with the field that we're holding.
Yes. Yes. I love that. That's for me that's very much my realm of work, which is embodied ascension, getting
Yeah,
into the body and
exactly. Yeah.
activating the heart. And I know the heart, I think you have a recent video out about ascension of the heart. Or maybe I read that on your website. When I read
Yeah.
ascension of the heart, I'm like, yes, they're speaking my language. Will you share about that and what that is, what that means?
Well, yeah, actually, I was hosting a retreat in Sedona, Arizona, and some of the guides that I channel, they come from what we call the bird tribe. It's like an ascended race that is an avian origin or avian orientation. And these beings were saying to us, when I was channeling them for the group at the retreat, that we are so often preoccupied with concepts of physical ascension, and actually the ascension of the heart is what comes first. We are aligning with a process of first awakening a coherent group harmonic resonance field through the heart and expanding that globally and uh, supporting a healing and reconnection process through the heart. And then once that has been established, once we are synchronized through the heart, then other levels of the ascension process will start to accelerate. And the kind of physical ascension process, what that actually looks like, how long it might take, what the phases of it are, that's something that will start to become more apparent as a collective revelation of our potential. A collective revelation is something that, while an individual person may have glimpses of it, there are certain things that are going to come to us collectively when we are ready to hear the teaching as a collective. There are certain things that are being spoken to us as one being, but we have to align enough with the experience of our oneness to be able to hear the things that are being spoken to us about what ascension is going to look like down through the ages. So the ascension of the heart comes first. It's a really, really big piece that is coming more into focus for more and more people right now.
Yeah. Yeah, that really rings true for me, and that the heart is a portal and a stargate. And when we travel within that center, we do find that connectedness to really to oneness to everything and all that is created. Um, so that's fun. Thank you for sharing about that.
Yeah, thanks. That video's on my YouTube channel, by the way.
Okay. Yeah. Do you want to share the name of your YouTube channel?
Well, anyone can just type in Saryon, Saryon, and you'll find me.
Okay. Yeah, it's a unique name like mine. um, you mentioned when we talked before about angelic star seeds. Would you unpack the concept of what is an angelic star seed?
Yes. Well, an angelic star seed, in one sense, is what some people are. They've come in as an angelic star seed, and I'll explain what that is. But an angelic star seed is also something that anyone can become in another sense. When you understand the path of integration that we're actually on with both the angelic presence and the galactic presence. So, one way of describing it, and this is a teaching that came from Archangel Metatron. Metatron was explaining that an angelic star seed is someone who is an incarnated angel, but they have incarnated as an angel on other galactic worlds. So they've been, a Pleiadian incarnated angel, a Syrian incarnated angel. They've done this kind of angelic integration work to help another civilization get connected to the angelic presence by bringing in that angelic energy into those other worlds. So when somebody has done that on other worlds as an angel, and then they've come here to do the same thing here, but they're also carrying these galactic lifetimes and galactic memories, then that's an angelic star seed. However, this is something that Metatron said about it, is that a lot of people have come in and the star seed aspect of themselves has awakened first, and they may not realize that the integration process is going to keep expanding beyond the starseed connection or the ET walk-in aspect, and you're going to be integrating with the angelic presence in such a way that the angelic presence kind of comes to the forefront and is supporting all of these other galactic pieces to integrate into it. So Metatron was really inviting people that identify with themselves as starseeds or galactic emissaries to become an angelic starseed, to realize that integrating with the angel that you are or the angelic presence and becoming seamlessly integrated with the angelic presence in your consciousness, that's going to change the game. That's going to change your sense of self, your sense of your identity, and it's also going to create a very powerful bridge, not just on the human level, but our angelic integration process is actually going to help inspire a deeper angelic integration process in some of these other galactic cultures that many people are representing.
Is there an overall intention or purpose of the angelic collective or angelic presence?
Yes. Probably the best way I could describe this is to say, if you were looking at the entire spectrum of consciousness in the galaxy, all of the civilizations that are there, on the part of the spectrum that is the most highly evolved, you have groups that have gone through an angelic integration process, meaning that those civilizations have become seamlessly integrated with their angelic counterparts. They have integrated angelic qualities of consciousness. And in doing so, the angels that overlay that civilization have also gone through an evolution. They have become more like the civilization that they are guiding. So it's kind of an exchange. You're taking on these different characteristics of each other. But the fusion of those two parts, the planetary and the angelic, creates a tremendous amount of momentum in the ascension process. So the angels are bringing us a connection to divine love. They often will represent qualities of consciousness in a very rarefied divine frequency that we are in the process of integrating with. And that could vary from civilization to civilization. The qualities of consciousness that the angelics brought to the Arcturians could be a little bit different than the ones that we are integrating with that's most relevant to our evolutionary process. But the Arcturians are the ones that I use as an example of this because they've integrated with their angelic counterparts. And they say, as well as the Arcturian angels will describe to us, that we are going through a similar process here that they went through there.
Hmm. What is that process that they went through?
Well, it's a process of allowing the divine embrace of the angelic energy in a way that becomes seamlessly integrated in your consciousness, and probably the most relatable way to understand what that looks like in a person's evolutionary process is that this is what takes your intuition to the highest level. The connection between the angelic presence, which is always feeding and sourcing one's intuitive senses, and a person's capacity to develop into a more intuitive way of being. Our intuitive senses are opening and expanding tremendously, and the angels are sourcing that. So when you just go a step further and you integrate the angels into your consciousness, it's like your intuition becomes married to the very thing that is sourcing its expansion. It's a very beautiful process that I went through many years ago. And now I feel such a closeness with the angelic realms and my angelic guides. I hear from them all the time. I can feel how my spiritual blueprint in this life is intimately interconnected with what they are holding with me. It's like they are holding a more fully realized, complete understanding of the blueprint. And whatever blueprint that I was created with, and this is true for all human beings, the angels that are working with you are part of that. It's like they are a gift to help you realize the blueprint, because they're holding the vision of it, and they're cheering you on, and they're guiding you, and they're protecting you, and they're also helping you integrate your human experiences. There are ways that they can do that some of the extraterrestrial energies are not able to. It's just a different consciousness.
Beautiful. I love that. That whole conversation just feels so delightful.
Yeah, I
As you're
mean, for
talking, I was
me,
just feeling an expansion. Like,
I
wow.
want to inspire people. I
Yeah.
want people to feel as excited about angelic integration as they are about starseed integration,
Yeah. Yes.
and
I'm
see
so
them
glad you.
actually as aspects of one process that is meant to go together. It's actually meant to be both.
Yeah. Yeah, it's incredible how tied together all of these consciousnesses are with, between the star seeds, the walk-ins, the hybrids, the ETs, the angels, the galactic, all of the galactics, the and the new human, and all of the different things that we could call it. It really feels, and just from all of these conversations I've been having with people like you, Saryan, it makes me feel very hopeful about this ascension process, and all of the different amazing teachers and voices that this truth and energy is coming through. um, I think it's an incredible piece, the angelic starseed and integration. So thank you so much for sharing that and all of this. We are getting close to the end of our time together. I want to make sure we have time to share about your offers. And also, before we jump into that, you're writing a book, right? Can you share about your book or series of
Well,
books?
yeah, it's a series. I'll show you. This is the first one. If people have not seen this book yet, this is a must read. This is a channeled fiction book. There's not a lot of fiction books that are channeled from, masters and angels and galactic beings and beings from the inner earth in the way that this one was. This was a huge collaboration from many different families of consciousness that helped me create this. And you can see, I'm going to hold the cover up a little closer here. I don't know if you can
Mhm.
see. Um, you see these three rings that are coming together. These represent three different worlds. One is the surface culture, one is the advanced civilizations of the inner earth, and another is a breakaway civilization of secret military, advanced technology, deep underground military base kind of stuff. And you see that these three worlds are going through a bit of a process of colliding with each other, of uh, perhaps integrating in certain ways. It's obviously a story that's not resolved just in one book, but this is book 1 of 4, and like well into the process of the second book. And yeah, I'm really excited about it because the stuff that's in there is very prophetic. It warns people about stuff that's actually starting to unfold now in our world that people need to really be aware of, especially the different timelines regarding are we going to integrate with an immersive experience of Mother Gaia that opens all of our inner senses, or are we going to cross a bridge of becoming married to immersive technology, which would completely derail humanity's ascension process? So it's a deep exploration of those topics. So yeah, there's that, and also I do readings for people where I channel people's spiritual guides. So I'm able to connect with any spiritual guide that wants to come through, whether it's angelic, galactic, ascended master, and I love doing it. I have a huge passion for introducing people to their guides and helping them to become aware of how their guide wants to work with them and how to engage that process.
Wonderful. That's so exciting. And I want to read your book. It's fun to read fiction, and I love the idea of conscious fiction. I see movies coming in the future.
Yeah, same here. A lot of people say that when they read the books, like, when's the movie coming out?
Yeah, that's next. Okay, so let's share about your free gift. You are giving away a learning to channel course with 13 lessons, written material, video teachings. Can you share more about that?
Yeah, that is available if you go to my website, saryon.com, and click on Learn with Saryon. You can create a free account and get access to that free course. And you just go in. There's 13 lessons, and it's written, it's video. I kind of had fun creating this when the pandemic first broke out, and everyone was like stuck at home. So I thought, well, I'm going to create a free course for people and teach them how to channel. So there's a lot of fun that went into it because I used movie clips from different films to illustrate different concepts. So there's that. But then if people are really interested in really going deep, like having breakthroughs in channeling, learning how to work with their spiritual guides as part of their lifestyle, learning how to work with the ascended masters, and this whole process of angelic integration, I have a course on angelic integration. And that comes after the whole course that I channeled from the Arcturians, where the Arcturians were helping us to integrate with their energies. So all of these courses, it's like a whole package, a whole library of different courses that were all channeled in a sequence. And it's one complete educational process. And that's something that's available where you can just pay a fee and get access to a 3-month pass that allows you to access all of it. You can jump around, you can download the classes as MP3s, and everything you need is there to really jumpstart your process of channeling or connecting with guides and take it to another level.
Wow, amazing. That is such a generous offer. And then you also have a paid offer, which is 3 months access to the School of Manifestation Foundation courses. Can you
That's what we were just talking about. Yeah.
Oh, that was the second part of what you just shared.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
called School of Manifestation Foundation courses, and that part's paid, but your first part is the learning to channel course with 13 lessons and all that. I will have links to all of that in the show notes, and so people can find it just at one click, and that should make it easy for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this has just been delightful, Saryon. I've enjoyed this conversation so much, and I do feel like it really served all of the listeners and viewers, and offered such an expansion in consciousness. And as we end, I would love to invite you to play your golden bowl for us.
Yes. So I love this bowl. It's one of the first ones that we ever added to our collection. And it just has such a unique resonance to it. And this is a heart frequency bowl. It's also made of 24 karat gold and pure quartz crystal. So I'm just going to play this a little bit and just relax, take it in, and maybe hold an intention of whatever it is you're wanting to call forth more of, whether it's healing energy, angelic energy, heart energy, compassion, whatever it is you're wanting to bring into your life more. Just hold that and ask for it.
Thank you so much. This was such a pleasure. Thank you to everyone watching and listening. Have a beautiful day or evening, and namaste.
Thank you and namaste.